I want to tell you about a little bit about my own worrisome and wonderful tale. Just a little bit from my life, and then I want to lead you through the three phases, layers that I'm talking about, how to get through the worry and how to start to dissolve that cloud, that spell of worry and anxiety. So here's a little bit about my story. When I was 7 years old, my family and I, we escaped as refugees to Canada. We lived for 6 months as refugees in Europe. We had a harrowing, terrifying, you could say, adventure, but at the time it was terrifying. 24 hours crossing over a mountain in the pitch dark. We risked our lives, we risked being arrested or shot, and certainly separated. And we made it. We made it to Canada 6 months later, and we started a new life. And as most people who first come to a new country, even a beautiful country like Canada, know that it's not easy. It's very challenging. And my parents, we had nothing when we came to Canada but the clothes on our back. And my dad worked, even though he was an engineer, he worked as a janitor, and he'd get home late, so late that I'd be getting ready to go to school. And growing up, the way I took all of those experiences in is I felt an incredible motivation to want to honor my family and help us survive and adapt to this new world. I learned English really quickly. I learned how to fit in. I didn't want to get in trouble. And I was really smart and good at learning things quickly. So I focused all my energy in getting straight A's in school, so that I could create the most opportunities for myself, but especially for my family. Now that sounds really wonderful and I guess ideal in a way to work so hard, but I suffered out of this because I was motivated not by a drive to do something great, but by a fear, an absolute terror of failure and disappointment and dishonor on my family. So I spent all my life up until my mid-20s being driven by fear. I remember going to do tests in university and high school, and I spent 2 days imagining what would happen if I failed. What that did is it zapped my brain and got me really motivated to study and stay up late and not let anything get in the way. The terror. So that fear drove me. It became my master, so much so that by the time I was 24, I was so wired and so afraid of screwing up, of not being good enough, of dishonoring my family, that something in me just couldn't bear that tension, and I crashed into oncoming traffic and nearly killed myself and several other people. Now that woke me up. I said, there's got to be a better reason for my life than to avoid something terrifying. And I also saw the consequences of that was going to destroy me. And ultimately, all my worst fears would come true. So, I spent the next 10, 12 years practicing, learning, studying to be a healer. I needed healing. I needed to learn to get through my fears, my worries, not be disabled by them, and I did exactly that. In that process, I worked as a teacher, as a therapist. I'm established in a career now as a therapist. I've worked with over 1,000 people on stage, as a leader, as a coach, and as a theater director, and as a martial arts instructor. So I've done lots of different jobs. They've all been about helping people. And the common denominator is helping people to step into their fears. And for me to do that authentically, I had to step into my fear. I had to walk on stage. I had to be vulnerable. I had to express myself. I had to show and earn trust of all my clients. Otherwise, why would you follow me, right? So I've learned to do that. And I've studied so many different approaches to fear, to working through difficult emotions, and I found the simplest, most effective ones that work for all of my clients. And I've reduced it to 3 layers of a very simple yet very powerful process that can take as quick as 3 minutes, sometimes even 2 minutes, once you get the hang of it. It might take a little longer to get started. Now, here are the 3 layers. And it's like layers of a cake. If you're missing a layer, it just doesn't taste right. But it's actually more than that. That's not the best metaphor. Each layer is integral to this process of not just coping and dealing and living with fear like you do when you take medication or you just learn to manage, but in resolving the fear, in walking through it and getting to the other side, gradually and naturally and gently. Each layer is essential. If you're missing a layer, it's much harder to do. It could take much longer, and you might not get all the way through. And I'll explain that. So, the first layer, it's about soothing your nerves. When we start to even talk about fear and worry, our nervous system starts to get cued. It starts to worry, starts to think, oh, I don't want to think about that. Or if I do think about that, oh no. And as soon as we start to imagine things that we're afraid of, worried about, our nervous system starts to get zapped. It's like an electrical grid. It starts to get current and voltage. And if we're not careful, if we're not able to soothe our nerves, if we're not able to calm that nervous system, we can get zapped and overcharged and our circuits can break. So we need to be able to reset those circuits. We need to be able to discharge that charge. And there are many ways to do this. Again, I've learned many, many different ways. You know, deep breathing is a beautiful way. Doing yoga, so many different practices. But they're not easy. And they're not easy to do in the process of healing and resolution. The simplest, most easiest way to learn to do this is something called emotional freedom techniques that I have studied and used for years. It's based on the principle of acupressure and acupuncture. There's a web of nervous system web through our body, and there are points in that nervous system that when we tap them with a needle or with a light touch, it releases the energy, the emotion, the charge, and allows our system to flow more freely. It's the same thing as when we breathe deeply, when we go into nature or drink water. So I'm going to teach you that in the next video. This is the video where we're setting it up. Next video we're going to teach you, okay? So, if we don't have a way to soothe our nervous system while we're facing our fears, 2 things happen. We get overwhelmed, we shut down, or we get exhausted. And it's hard work. It's hard work feeling fear and going through it. Ooh. So that's going to help us to stay clear, stay focused, and full of energy and life, and not get stuck. Layer 2, another essential layer that we cannot miss. This is about accepting what is, accepting our reality. You know, human beings are remarkable creatures. We can invent a way to fly to the moon, to talk to our friends, and video each other instantly across thousands of miles. And when it comes to facing something terrifying, we've also invented millions of ways to avoid that. We have this gift, this creativity, this imagination that can help us create things that we need, but it can also help us to escape from what's really going on. Now, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with getting away or distracting ourselves from things that cause us to worry? Well, not necessarily anything's wrong with that if we do it once or twice or in a healthy way to get a little distance, a little bit of space. But if it becomes a habit, an addiction, if we tune out every time we start thinking about something, or we start to eat or drink or smoke, or we just try to block it. One, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. The fear inside of us wants to be heard. It comes out in our sleep. It bothers us when we're tired. It creeps up. We can't control it. We can't get rid of it. It's part of us. It needs to be confronted and faced with gentleness, with compassion. But it needs to be faced. Now, a second thing that happens, and when we deny any emotion, especially fear, is it gets louder, it persists, and it keeps going until it gets our attention. And it's kind of like it has a mind of its own. If you ignore somebody and they really are trying to talk to you, they're going to try harder and harder to get your attention. That is why so many of us get sick. And so many health problems are related to how we deal with emotions, or how we don't deal with emotions, how we suppress them or deny them. So we're going to accept what really is in our body, what we're really experiencing in our mind, what we're really thinking. We're going to name the worry, acknowledge what it is and what it's trying to tell us, and then we're going to go even deeper into that and get to the heart of what it's really trying to tell us, to the need. There's a need behind everything. There's a basic human need behind everything. For example, if you worry about money, it could be because you don't feel like you have enough. So you want to feel, the need is to feel like you're enough and you have enough. Or it could be that you're worried about the scarcity of it and the survival aspect of it. And you want to feel safe, and you want to feel like you have something to hold on to that gives you certainty and security. Or it could be, and this has been in my case, you're worried because if you have less, you're worried about what other people think and how they see you, and maybe they see you as not such a competent provider, and your pride, and you want to feel respected and appreciated and accepted. These are deeper needs that we have that drive the worry. So we're going to get to that as well. And we're going to accept those needs that drive us. It's a huge step that when people don't do this, and we're just chasing feelings and trying to get rid of feelings, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I'd ask you to trust me, but I'm also going to ask you to use the practice that I'm going to show you in the next video and see for yourself. This is just my experience of working with over 1,000 people. Okay, so the third layer. Recap, the first layer, soothing the nerves. Second layer, accepting reality as it is and going deeper and understanding why we worry. What do we really care about? What do we really need? Third layer. This one is transformative. It involves the imagination. Our fears and worries come not from the front of our brain. They come from our imagination. They're stored memories. They're stored nightmares, pieces and fragments that are living in there that are trying to get out, trying to be expressed, and that need to be healed and resolved. That imagination, when it's not used properly, it's like the quote, worry is a misuse of the imagination. When we worry, we start to go into what if this happens, what if that happens, and we really picture it and imagine it and start to feel it as if it was happening. And the more we get into that, the more we experience that and imagine it, picture it, and pretend that it's really happening, the more we feel the effect of that, the thing that we're terrified of, and the more we're creating this energetic, magnetic field that draws those experiences to us. We all know this instinctually. We know that the thing that we're afraid of, we start to draw it towards us the more energy we put into that fear. But we can't control that process with just our frontal cortex. Our front part of the brain says, no, stop worrying, it's not working, it's not effective. It's not powerful enough. We have to tap into our imagination into what I call a state of wonder. This is a state of openness, of curiosity, of surrender, and allowing what really wants to be expressed, what really wants to happen inside of us. Not the result of our worst nightmare, but the result of and the fruit of our deepest longing, our need being met fully. That's a blueprint in our DNA. That's part of our destiny. That's what our soul is here to do. That's our life purpose, is to fulfill our deepest needs and to help others to do the same. Now, we have to find a way to access that imagination, that beautiful what if, that creative part of us. And it's not as hard as we think. I spend a lot of time training and learning these creative, imaginative ways and trying them out with all sorts of different people, with kids, with seniors, with families. It's simple. We're going to access that state of wonder deep inside our brain. We're going to access our memories, our imagination, and we're going to allow something transformative to start to happen inside of us. This is far deeper than trying to get rid of a worry and feel momentarily better. I promise you that you'll start to feel that if you try this approach. Again, don't believe me, try it, find out. But on a deeper level, this is really about using the doorway of fear, of worry, to get to what you really want, what you really need. That's what the worry is trying to point you towards. If you ignore it, it's like cutting off the heads of weeds. They keep growing back. But if we trace it down to the root and we address the root cause, unfulfilled needs, you'll start to feel a deep, profound, subtle, quiet, natural, and gentle shift into more and more a state of wonder in your life. That's what I want to guide you through in the next video. Now, to help you prepare for that, you don't have to do this, but this is going to help you. It's going to make it simpler and easier to just step right in and get started. On the bottom of this page, there's a PDF download of one page of a track sheet. I want you to just write down your worries, one at a time. It's going to also ask you to rate the intensity. What I mean by that is from a 0 to 10, how intense is that in your body, and a feeling sense when you think about that worry. For example, if you're kind of worried a little bit about going outside and getting mugged, that's just like a small thing that bugs you, it's probably a 2 or 3. If you're extremely anxious and you can't sleep at night thinking about your wisdom tooth or something that you have to take care of that you've been avoiding, and it's gnawing at you, and it's an 8, 9, 10 probably. And then I'm going to ask you to prioritize on the sheet which worry you want to deal with first. I want you to take charge of your inner world and this process of healing and growth, and not just haphazardly come to it when you may and deal with it when it's absolutely driving you crazy. But I want you to prioritize and pick first, second, and third. Next video, I'm going to ask you to take your first worry, your most important priority for you to deal with, and follow me as I guide you through the process so that you can experience more of a state of wonder, more freedom, more ease, more curiosity, more openness, more surrender, more peace. Oh, I so want that for you. I'm so glad that you followed me in this video, that you signed up, that you're listening, that you're taking this information in. Feel free to read the summary if you need to, or just download it for yourself so you can read it. It's a great little article with pictures too. And I want you to be ready for something wonderful to happen.